What is up guys, and today we've got the brand new Oneplus 5T, and we're going to do a battery drain test against the best of the best. Just before we get right into it, I've got loads more Oneplus 5T coverage coming up soon, and a pretty huge giveaway in December, so make sure you subscribe for that, and let's get right into it. Alright, so all of these phones are on 100%, we have literally just taken out the charging cables, and we're going to start with YouTube. In fact, throughout this test we'll try and make it as realistic a usage case scenario as possible, so we'll try and stick to applications that for the most part people use on a regular basis. Now you're going to notice the Oneplus 5T has a very similar specification sheet to the Oneplus 5. Its battery capacity is completely identical, except it has a slightly taller, larger display. And already after the first 15 or so minutes, we can start to see it working to its detriment. Whilst the Google Pixel 2 XL and the iPhone 8 Plus claim to be on an impressive 100%, the Oneplus 5T is sitting on 98 and the Oneplus 5 is on 99. Something to bear in mind is the battery percentage we're seeing on the Pixel and the iPhone might be a little bit misleading. Sometimes manufacturers adjust the software so that the battery looks like it's falling very slowly to begin with, to give people an initial level of confidence, and that seems to be what's happening with both of these two phones. Not to worry, by the time we reach the end of this test, the true king will become clear. Alright, so after 30 minutes, the Oneplus 5T is sitting at just 1 percentage point below the Oneplus 5, which is doing pretty well, but apparently not as good as the Pixel and the iPhone yet. Now we're going to switch over to a bit of gaming. So we've got an app here called Oasis, which is kind of like you tend to your own little universe. It's not particularly demanding, but we're going to keep refreshing the screen to make sure they're staying active. You'll notice the Galaxy S8 Plus, which actually has the second largest battery capacity among these phones, is on the lowest percentage by quite a long way. Time will tell if that trend persists, but so far it's not looking too promising. As we move towards the 1 hour mark, some of these trends become a little bit exaggerated. The Oneplus 5T is now a whole 3 percentage points behind the Oneplus 5, but notice the Galaxy S8 Plus has actually clawed back a percentage point compared to the iPhone 8 Plus. A pretty interesting thing to do now would be to head onto the Play Store or App Store, depending on which phone it is, and download a new application and then play that application. The game we've chosen to download is called Shadowmatic, which is a physics-based puzzle game that is quite demanding. It's got high resolution textures and shadows, and also does use the accelerometers in the device. Now if a smartphone's battery life was only determined by what capacity battery was in there, this would obviously be a very pointless test. But what makes these battery experiments so interesting is that battery life depends on so many different things. Everything from display size, display resolution, the efficiency of the system on a chip inside each phone, as well as software. And these of course vary wildly between these 5 devices, so we are going to get some quite unexpected results. As you may be able to tell, we're now pulling up Super Mario Run, clearly a very popular title on both Android and iOS. And after about 20 minutes of that, the gap between the Oneplus 5 and the Oneplus 5T has further widened, but at the same time the gap between the Galaxy S8 Plus and the iPhone 8 Plus has dropped to just 2 percentage points. As you can also see, this puts the Oneplus 5T on complete parity with the Pixel 2 XL. And it'll be interesting to see how those two end up comparing, because the Oneplus 5 typically in these battery tests has continuously won, but of course the 5T is just not as geared towards battery. It's got a larger 6-inch display on it and also supports a higher resolution, and both of those are going to cause more battery drain. After about half an hour of Google Maps with Wi-Fi on but location off, the Galaxy S8 Plus finally storms through and overtakes the iPhone 8 Plus. What we're going to do now is load up the cameras on all the devices, and I've set them up to record video at 4K 30 frames per second. So we'll leave them all to do that and see how that affects battery. You might be aware that the iPhone 8 Plus actually has the capability to record in 4K 60 frames per second, but for the sake of parity on this test, we'll record in 4K 30. Weirdly enough, after barely 10 minutes of this recording, we have knocked a whole 9 percentage points off the iPhone 8 Plus's battery, which really cements its position in last place. Bear in mind though that none of these phones are doing badly. We have just surpassed the 3 hour mark on what is nothing short of an artificially intense test, and none of these phones are below the 30% mark. We're now going to pull up Instagram for a bit, which to be honest I would not expect to drain a lot of battery on any of these phones. Not only is it pretty light on what resources it requires to run, but also both on Android and iOS, most of the primary social media applications are very well optimized just because so many people use them. And sure enough, after about half an hour of Instagram, we haven't made too much of a dent in any of these batteries. But that's about to change. We're going to pull up GFX Bench, which is essentially a super intensive graphics pushing benchmark on all of these phones. This is going to test them. As the iPhone seems to be falling further and further behind, the 5T seems to be clinging on quite nicely. Whilst it is significantly behind the 5, it's not like that gap is really widening. The gap that we can see widening though is the one between the 5T and the Pixel 2 XL. Whilst at the beginning it was pretty unclear which of the two was going to last longer, as it stands the 5T has a substantial lead over the Pixel, which is somewhat unexpected given it does have a smaller battery capacity, but it is worth bearing in mind that both the Pixel 2 XL and the Samsung Galaxy S8 have the highest resolution displays among these 5 phones by quite a long margin, and more pixels to push is inherently more taxing on the battery. Now that benchmark really didn't do any favours to the iPhone, and it's not very long into a quick game of Oasis that phone packs it in and calls it a day. And with just 9% left at this point, it seems pretty likely that the S8 Plus is going to follow suit. And just to finish these phones up to really accelerate the test, we're going to pull up the benchmark once more and see which one bottles first. And sure enough, out goes the Galaxy S8 Plus, but bear in mind it has lasted quite a bit longer, well into the 5-hour mark before it finally gave in. So it was a good amount ahead of the iPhone 8 Plus, and also has a higher resolution, larger display to push, so not a bad performance at all. Just before we do get into the final results and conclusions, as I said, it really would help me out if you could smash that subscribe button. We have a lot more OnePlus 5T coverage coming up soon, as well as that giveaway. Alright, so at 4 hours 43, no surprises, the iPhone 8 Plus was the first device to call it quits. And in fourth place, as you saw, lasting over half an hour longer than the iPhone, we have the S8 Plus. As we continued running the benchmark till the very end, the Pixel 2 actually held out pretty well, lasting till 5 hours and 32. The 5T pushed this out even further, managing to stay alive until 5 hours and 50, and as you might have expected, the OnePlus 5 here took the crown once again with 6 hours and 4 minutes. That's incredible. So whilst the 5T is not here to take the crown and become battery life king, it is nice to see that it is using a lot of the fundamental software optimizations used in the OnePlus 5 to make that phone great. Thanks a lot for watching guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'm signing out.